Here is something nobody is going to say out loud in your next team meeting. The best customer success manager on the team is almost never the one who gets promoted. And let that sink in for a second. You can be the person who saves the messy renewal. You can be the one that the customer asks for by name, and you can be the CSM whose accounts somehow always renew and expand and stay healthy. And you can still be the person leadership forgets when promotion season comes around, when the raise talk comes around. And you can still be the person that leadership will end up forgetting when promotion season comes around, or talking about a raise, or protecting a seat when a restructure gets decided. I have watched it happen and I have lived through it. And if you are honest with yourself, you have probably watched it happen too. The loud ones move up, the quiet operators stay stuck right where they are. And they're the ones that are carrying the books of business. They're the ones that are keeping the lights on. So today we are going to talk about why this happens, but more importantly, to talk about how to make sure it never happens to you again. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Anika Zubair, and welcome to the Customer Success Pro podcast, your go-to space for real talk, expert advice, and actionable insights in the world of customer success. I'm a CS executive leader, award-winning strategist, CS coach, and customer success fanatic. I help CSMs and CS leaders build the skills and the confidence to become revenue-driving pros and scale world-class CS teams. So whether you're brand new to CS or a seasoned leader, this podcast is here to support your growth. Because customer success isn't a destination, it's a journey. And I'm here to be your guide and navigate every step of your journey. So join me every Wednesday where you'll get fresh CS tips, tricks, and strategies you can actually use. Some weeks I'll share my own insights and best practices from working in CS over the last 13 years. And once a month, I'll bring on expert guests to dive into the most relevant and pressing topics in customer success today. So if you're ready to level up, hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in, and let's make your CS journey a little bit easier together. Welcome back to the Customer Success Pro podcast. I'm Anika Zubair, and this show is where we talk about how to become revenue-generating customer success professionals, the kind of CSM that companies actually fight to keep and rush to promote. And this episode is a little personal for me because being invisible at work is actually one of the most expensive mistakes that you can make in your career. And almost nobody warns you about it. And it's actually something that I've personally felt early on in my career. And I work and coach with tons of customer success professionals and leaders. And I really wanted to record today's episode to make sure that you, as the hardest working person in SaaS, as I've always said on these podcasts, customer success is the hardest working department in SaaS, but get the least amount of credit. And today's episode, I want to make sure that you do not make the mistakes I did early on in my career. And over the next 20 to 30 minutes, I'm going to have a framework, a real one that I have used, something that you can walk away with this week and make sure that your leadership remembers your name for the right reasons. Not because you posted more things on Slack, not because you talked more in a meeting, but because your business impact became impossible to ignore. And let me start with a number that stopped me in my tracks when I read it. According to Gallup WorkHuman's 2025 research, only 22% of employees say that they receive the right amount of recognition for the work that they do. Only 22%, which means nearly 8 in 10 people feel under-recognized at work. And here's the part that really got me. That number has not moved since 2022. 3 years, the same gap. So if you're sitting here and thinking, I work really hard, I get results, and somehow nobody seems to notice, you are not imagining it. You are in the majority, actually. 8 out of 10 people around you feel exactly the same way. If you actually have a team of 10 CSMs at your company, I'm guessing 8 of you feel the exact same way. Now layer on top that the world we are actually living in right now in 2026, well, we are in deep in this era where do more with less. Teams are leaner, books of business are bigger than ever, and AI has standardized the basic work, the notes, the follow-ups, the health summaries, the first draft of every QBR, which means the floor has gone up for everyone, okay? Competent is now the baseline. Competent does not get you noticed anymore. Competent gets you a bigger book of business, a thank you in the team channel, and just more work at the end of the day. And think about the cultural moment that we are in. We have just lived through another award season. And every single year, the same thing is true about awards. The person who wins is not always the most talented person in the category. The person who wins is the one whose work the room actually knew about. The campaign, the visibility, the story, all of that is what actually mattered when winning an award. And that is exactly how recognition works everywhere. In Hollywood, in your company, it's just how the world works. So here is today's uncomfortable truth, the thing I want you to really think about when listening to this podcast. Like, I want you to plant right now at the start of this episode, I want you to really think your work does not speak for itself. It never has, okay? Your work is great. I'm not saying you're not great at your job, but your work cannot speak for yourself no matter how good you are as a customer success professional. The myth that great work gets noticed on its own is the single most career limiting belief in customer success. Actually, rewind. It is the single biggest limiting belief, I think, across all jobs, all markets, all careers. And we really need to stop believing that myth today. All right, let me describe a person to you and tell me if you recognize them, okay? She is brilliant at her job. Her customers absolutely love her. Her renewals come in clean. And when something goes wrong with like a key account or an enterprise client, she is the one people pull in to fix that. She is reliable. She is sharp. She is someone who genuinely cares about her customers. And when the promotion cycle comes around, she gets passed over and over again. Not because she's not good enough, but because nobody above her or her direct manager actually knows what she does all day long. And this is the relevancy to your role that I really just want you to understand and really think about, because most CSMs never actually see it until it's already cost them. And I'm not just talking about customer success managers, also to the CS leaders that are listening to this episode. You can be the most valuable person on your team and the most invisible person in your company at the exact same time. Those two things are not in conflict, okay? They coexist all the time. It's actually probably what's happening within your organization right now. And in customer success specifically, this problem is so much worse than anywhere else in the business. And it's because we like to be people pleasers, but we don't like to stand up for ourselves. And I'm going to tell you why in more detail in this episode, okay? But let's just dive in and kind of get into why this happens in CS, particularly more than any other department, okay? And the reason it doesn't happen with sales, for example, sales has a number on the screen, okay? Sales always has a quota, right? Everyone sees the number of deals they close. There's a notification in a celebration Slack. There's a leaderboard. They ring a bell. The whole company watches sales win in real time, okay? Customer success protects and grows revenue, but we do it in a slow motion and behind closed doors. And a renewal that took you 9 months of careful relationship building and value proving and stakeholder mapping and managing shows up one quiet line item at a time, okay? And one little churn save didn't just happen suddenly, it happens over time. And nobody throws a party for revenue that stayed. Nobody rings a bell because something did not break. They just kind of expect it to keep happening. So your biggest wins are often disasters that never actually happened. And it's very, very hard to get recognized for a fire you prevented when nobody ever saw the smoke in the first place. And that is a trap that we fall in customer success, especially when customer success is a revenue function, but it is a revenue function that does its best to work in the dark. And you do not deliberately turn on the lights And if you do not deliberately really ring the bell out loud, you are going to spend your entire career being essential, but also being extremely overlooked. And this matters more than ever in 2026 because I would just say even 2 years ago, okay, 2 years ago back in 2024 and even back in 2023, when teams were getting cut left, right, and center, I think customer success teams were getting cut the most in 2023 and 2024, truly. And when leaderships were looking at this, leadership was not looking at sales all the time. They didn't look at protecting the people that do the most important work, because that is what I think customer success does. They just cannot. They do not have a window into the work that customer success is doing because it's behind a closed door. They protect the people whose impact they can see. They can tie it to a number. And visibility is not a vanity project anymore, okay? Visibility has now become job security. Visibility is your leverage. Visibility is the difference between being promoted and being online on a spreadsheet that's going to happen during the next reorganization and reorg. And basically, you end up being the person cut rather than the person promoted. So this is the problem that we are going to solve today, not how to be better at your job. You're probably already doing a great job at your job. The problem is how to make your business impact really legitimate to the people who make the decisions about your future. Okay, first, I want to start with some of the mistakes that I keep seeing a lot of customer success professionals make, but also I've made these early in my career too, and they keep you invisible. And I just want to remind you that almost certainly these next things are really going to hurt you more than they're going to help you. All right, the first mistake is probably due to the fact that customer success has experienced this time and time again, but we end up reporting activity instead of reporting outcomes. And this is, again, the way customer success has been brought up over the last 15 years. Early on in the CS journey in SaaS, activity mattered. But now in 2026, it really doesn't matter. So when your manager asks how your week went, you say things maybe like, well, I ran 12 calls, and then I sent a QBR deck. I had a value realization call. I caught up with my held scores. All of that, by the way, is activity. And activity tells leadership you are busy. It does not tell them you are valuable. And also in a world of AI, just think about it, okay? AI is very much replacing all busy work, not just in customer success, but across the entire tech organizations. If you think about it, the way AI works now, we are no longer as busy as we were 6 months ago or 12 months ago. So if you're giving your leadership team an activity report of all the tasks you're doing, to me, as a customer success leader, that's just looking like you are telling me that I can get AI to automate a lot of the work you're doing. And then if I read between the lines there, it's telling me that you are probably replaceable by AI because I can get AI to do tasks, but I can't get AI to make impact. And yes, busy people get more work done and it makes your brain feel better, like you did something for the day. But busyness is really just your mind tricking yourself into thinking you're valuable, okay? And busyness doesn't actually get promoted. Valuable people get promoted. And these things are not the same conversation. All right, the second mistake that I see too often is you speak customer success language to people who only speak revenue. And I know I go on and on and on about revenue and the importance of revenue in customer success. And if you've ever met me in person or if you've ever watched me speak at a conference or an event, everything I talk about is revenue. And the reason I say this until I'm basically blue in the face is because that is what businesses care about, by the way. It's the only thing businesses care about. Now, unless you work for a nonprofit or charity, which I'm guessing if you work in customer success, most of us work for pretty profitable or trying to be profitable tech companies, everyone's trying to make profit, and profit is revenue. And when you speak to any senior leadership or when any senior leadership sees you, they just see you as a cost, right? They see you as money, right? We are paying you money to do a job. And they then see, okay, the output you're doing is either generating us revenue or costing us revenue. So truly, anyone who's an investor, anyone who's on a board, anyone who's a C-suite, anyone who's ever been in any sort of role or job is thinking about revenue. Even if you're just a CSM in your very first year of your job, by the way, well, welcome to customer success. But really, even if you're a CSM in your very first job, I have to say, you are not working for free unless you're an intern. But if you are actually getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, wherever you are in the world, you're working for revenue, by the way. You are trying to grow the revenue in your bank account, right? And so that is the same thing that your leadership cares about. So whenever you walk into a leadership update and you end up talking about adoption, engagement, sentiment, health scoring, feature usage, and the executives that are in the room and then they start politely nodding while internally they're translating none of that. Because that language in that room is not about health scores. It's going to be about net revenue retention or gross revenue retention. It's about expansion. It's about dollars protected and dollars grown. And if you cannot tie your work to revenue, to those people, it just didn't happen. They really don't care about it. And I will say that again and again because it is the core of everything I teach and coach on. And if you cannot tie it to revenue, it really doesn't matter. And I say that, and I know that some people are going to come for me and say that, of course, there's work that doesn't always have to generate revenue. I agree. I completely agree. But we work in a world where your company is trying to become profitable or is profitable, which means their only goal in the whole world is revenue. And I'm just here to remind you of it. I'm really not the bad guy here. It's just the way the system works. I hope you get that. Okay, quick pause from the podcast. Let me talk to you directly for a moment because I know exactly where some of you are sitting right now. You are doing all of the work. You are carrying a serious book of business. And then there's this quiet frustration that follows you around, the feeling that you are essential, but also invisible. And you watch people with half your impact get the title, the raise, and the seat at the table that you cannot figure out what they have done and you do not. And review season makes your stomach drop because you know your story is not landing. You are tired of being the company's best kept secret. Now, imagine the other version of your career. Imagine walking into your next review with a one-page record of exactly how much revenue you protected and grew in dollars that nobody in the room could argue with. Imagine leadership already knowing your name before you open your mouth because your wins have been traveling throughout the company for months. Imagine being the customer success manager the company fights to keep and rushes to promote because your value is not a feeling, it's a number and everyone can see it. And that's not luck, by the way. That's a skill set. And it is exactly what I teach inside of RevUp Academy. RevUp Academy is my 6-week cohort coaching program for customer success professionals who are done being overlooked and ready to operate like revenue leaders. Together, we build your commercial confidence, your executive language, and your ability to prove and tell your impact in the room where it counts. You will learn how to run your book like a revenue line, speak the language of leadership, and make yourself the most visible, most valuable person on your team from all the right reasons. And if you're ready to stop being the secret and start being the name that they remember, go to thecustomersuccesspro.com/revup. That's thecustomersuccesspro.com/revup. The next cohort is where your visibility stops being an accident and starts being a strategy. Okay, and now back to the episode. All right, mistake number 3 is you are single-threaded inside your own company, okay? We talk all the time about multi-threading with your customers. I've done a number of podcast episodes on this, but it's so important getting beyond your one champion so that your relationship doesn't collapse when they decide to leave or whatever happens. But almost nobody applies that same thinking internally. Okay, your entire visibility runs through one person, your direct manager. And if your one manager does not advocate loudly for you, you are invisible to everyone else. You have made your own career single-threaded, and single-threaded is truly just fragile and waiting to fail, if I'm honest. So whether it's a customer or your own reputation, just make sure you're not single-threaded there. All right, mistake number 4 is you hide behind the word we. This one is very personal to me because I was actually in an interview once, and I was in an interview for a VP of customer success role, and it was for the perfect company that I wanted to be a part of it. And it was actually probably pretty like for the work I was already doing. So I knew I was very qualified for the role, but I kept using we instead of I. And listen, I love a team player, but there is a version of humility that is actively hurting you. Okay. So when we say we saved an account or we drove that expansion, in a culture where everyone else is saying you just have erased your own contribution. The credit then floats away to the team, or worse, to the loudest person in the room that did absolutely nothing. And you can be generous and still be specific about what you personally did, okay? And again, in that interview, I said we a lot. And I said we because I thought I would represent my team. But I learned quickly once I got a no in that interview process that I needed to start saying I. And it's really hard, by the way, to do it because we as human beings, especially in customer success, love being a part of a team. It's community. It's us building together, but not when it comes to getting a promotion or keeping your job or landing a job. It is the I. So stop making the we mistake. All right, mistake number 5, you wait for review season to tell your story, okay? You spend 11 months heads down doing extraordinary work, or maybe 6 months. I don't know how often your review cycle is. For all the companies I worked at, we did it once a year. I know some companies do it twice or maybe even 3 times a year. But if you spend 11 months doing amazing work and then you try to cram a year of impact into one self-assessment at the end of the year, right before it's due, by then your manager has already half decided what they're already going to pick, okay? And by then also, the budget conversation about how much money they can give for promotions, it's already happened, okay? Visibility is not a thing you do once a year in a form. It is a habit you build all year long. And the deepest mistake under all of these, right, is you believe that good work is supposed to be good enough, and that promoting yourself is somehow distasteful or political or incorrect. I need you to release that belief today, because making your impact visible is not bragging. It's not politics. It's communication. It's the basic professional skill of making sure that people who decide your future actually understand the value that you create. Staying silent is not noble. It's just expensive. So those are the mistakes. Now, I want to take you through a framework that fixes all of them. All right. But before I jump into the framework, if you've made it to this point of the podcast, I would really, really appreciate if maybe you can just take 30 seconds to do 2 things for me. One, I would love if you just hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. Just hit subscribe. And 2, could you just leave me a comment down below? Just the simplest comment of what it is you liked about this podcast episode. I love that we have over 3,000 listeners every single month to this podcast, but about 95% of you listen in the dark. And I get it. We're all busy and we all go do a ton of different things, and podcasts are just on in the background. But it takes a lot of effort to run these podcasts. So I would love it so, so much. If you've gotten any value at all from this episode, just take 30 seconds, hit subscribe, and leave me a nice comment down below. I would really, really appreciate it. All right, so the framework. I want to be very, very clear about the kind of visibility that we are building here, because there is the wrong kind as well. And the wrong kind is noise. Basically positioning yourself as the loudest person, or posting constantly in Slack, or taking over people in meetings, like talking the loudest and manufacturing some sort of drama so you look good and busy and that you've solved these things. That's the kind of visibility that gets you attention for about a week. And then it gets you found out because there is no substance underneath it, right? And I'm not going to name names, but I've definitely had CSMs on my team as a CS leader where they felt the need to add commentary in every meeting, or they tried to sound smart about things or post about things. And all it really did was annoy me completely. And did they get promoted? Maybe eventually, but not first, okay? And I don't want you to do that. We are not going to do that. We are building visibility that is anchored to business impact, the kind that makes leadership actually trust you more every time they see your name, not less. All right, the framework I want to talk to you about, I call it the SEEN framework, SEEN. Okay, it's 4 moves. Each one is directly tied to revenue. So let me walk you through all 4. S is for stack the proof, right? Before you say a single word to anyone, you need evidence, not feelings, not effort, numbers, okay? You need to stack the proof, means you need to keep a running record of your receipts, okay? Like your revenue receipts, your revenue impact in dollars, in percentages, the renewals you protected. And again, not the customer names, but the revenue receipts. And what was it worth, okay? The expansion you drove. How much value did that add? The churn risk that you caught and saved early, and the revenue that you ended up saving because you caught that churn risk as early. That reference call that maybe you helped sales close a new business deal. Hello, revenue receipt, tick, tick, tick. All of that counts. And you've got to make sure you keep all of your receipts. Most customer success pros cannot answer the simplest question in their entire career, which is, what are you worth to this company in revenue terms? If a leader asks you right now today, how much revenue did you personally protect and grow this quarter? Could you answer with a number in under 10 seconds? And if you cannot, that is the first thing we fix, because everything else in this framework is built on that proof. And also, I just want to call out to the leaders that are listening to this episode. I want to make sure you have your revenue receipts, because a lot of times in CS, we focus again on the number of logos we've saved, or the number of customers overall, or even the net revenue retention number. And I want you to start using dollar values, because again, the 10% net revenue retention maybe makes sense to 1 or 2 people in the room, but you're being single threaded as well. And you got to make sure that you understand the dollars or pounds or euros or whatever currency you're in, the dollar or currency amount that you actually protect and grow. What does your team protect and grow? What if they actually clawed back in churn reduction? What if they helped build? Like, don't give it in just numbers. Make sure you have revenue attached to it, or the revenue receipts, as I said. You want to stack the proof, evidence first, always, by the way. Okay, so that is S, is stacking the proof. Now let's move on to the first E, which is elevate the language, okay? Now that you have your proof of receipts, I love that for you, have all your revenue receipts. Now you translate it out of customer success language and into the language of the room above you, or the room that actually makes the decisions on your promotion. Now, you do not say my accounts are healthy and engaged. You say something like, my book represents 4.2 $4.2 million in reoccurring revenue, and I am running it at 112% net revenue retention. Now, you do not say something like, I had a great QBR with a customer. You say, I used that business review to surface a $60,000 expansion opportunity that is now in the pipeline. Do you see the difference? It's the same work, but completely different reception. One sounds like a busy customer success professional, and the other sounds like someone who belongs in a revenue conversation. Executives do not need to learn your language. You actually need to learn theirs. NRR. GRR, ARR, expansion, pipeline, revenue retained. That is the vocabulary of people who decide your future. So that is the vocabulary that you're going to have to use when it comes to talk about all the work that you have done. So really elevate your language and speak revenue to the people who only really hear revenue. All right. The second E is expand the room. And this is that internal multi-threading that I talked about. And it is the most important move that almost nobody makes, okay? Your visibility cannot live and die with one manager. So you deliberately get your impact in front of more and more people. You want to get your visibility in front of leaders who are at least 1 or 2 levels up from you, okay? The sales leader who remembers you from helping land a deal, or maybe it's the finance partner who cares about retention and you helped chase that payment from that customer, or the product leader who needs to hear what your customers are actually screaming about and what they care about, and you want to build a relationship there. I just want to remind you that whether you're a CSM or a CS leader, you need to look 2 levels up or 2 levels out when it comes to multi-threading internally. Okay. And this is not about going around your manager. I don't mean that. It's about making sure your name and your results exist in more than just one person's mind or mouth when the promotion conversation is actually happening in a room that you are not in. You want 3 or 4 people in that room who can speak to your impact, not just one. This is how you make your reputation resilient instead of fragile. And I say this with personal experience because when I was at a growing startup, during review season, of course, the direct manager reviewed everyone's input, and HR did as well, or the people team. But what we did as an executive leadership team is we got around the room and we looked at the short list of everyone that was promoted or being asked to be promoted. And then the group of 8, or I think it was 9 of us, actually decided who was more worthy of these promotions based on their work across multiple teams. And there was, unfortunately, a lot of people that were on my team that did great work, but because they didn't see great work across multiple different leaders, not just me, they were skipped for promotion for other people in other departments getting that promotion. Just remember that when budget season comes around for your company, there's only a certain allotted amount of money that your company is going to be giving to promotions that year. And if multiple leaders are standing up for you saying, hey, this person has done great work, we need to give them a promotion, then that is exactly when you get seen rather than forgotten. And a simple example of this is when you win something like meaningful, like send a short, specific note to one leader beyond your manager, right? Like 2 sentences, and say something along the lines like, here's what happened, here's what it's worth. And you're not asking for anything. You just want to make sure that the right people can see the work. Again, if you helped protect churn, maybe let the finance team know, like head of finance, like, hey, by the way, I protected $30K in revenue and I know that's important this quarter because it's tight for us, right? Or maybe you tell the product team like, hey, I identified like 3 new opportunities for growth and that's going to mean that we're going to be able to sell more of our products. Like things like that. Just be relevant within the organization. You want to be able to expand the room that you're in, be multi-threaded inside your own company. And I just want to make sure that you have to do this organically and naturally. Don't feel like you're forcing yourselves to do this, but The way you are with your accounts, with the way you want to make sure you have multiple people, it's the same thing in your career, by the way, just inside your organization. All right, the last step in the scene framework is N, and N is the narrative that's going to win, okay? And this is the one people get wrong because they think it sounds like bragging. It is not. It is storytelling, and it's a professional skill. You need to be able to narrate the win means that you need to tell your story of impact repeatedly in the right places in a way people remember, and not a list of metrics, a short narrative with a beginning, a middle, and a number at the end, okay? And you want to make sure that the account was 30 days from churning, and here is the specific play that I ran. Here is the result, a $250,000 renewal saved, and here's my path to expansion next quarter. That is a story that a leader can repeat to their leader, and that is the secret. You're not just trying to be remembered, okay? You are trying to be repeatable. You want your leader to go and repeat what you said to other leaders. You want your win to be so clear and so tied to revenue that the person above you can carry it into a room, and a room where you'll also never walk into, and they're able to repeat the same story. So narrate the win, make your impact story something that people can pass along without you actually being there in the room. So that is the scene framework. Stack the proof, elevate the language, expand the room, and narrate the win. All right, let me tell you when I learned this the hard way. As I said, there's many times in my career where I definitely was not seen, and it's probably why I started to be more bullish and louder about it later on. And I have to say, I learned it quite early in my career. And if you watched or listened to my other podcast episodes where I went from a CSM to VP of customer success in 7 years, it's because I started to become visible and seen. Am I great at my job? Of course. Am I capable? Of course. But I also had to make sure that I was very seen in order to make that leap from CSM to VP in 7 years. And early on in my customer success career, I was that person I described at the top of this episode. I was good. I was good that my customers loved me. My renewals were clean. They were early. And I genuinely believe that if I just kept my head down and did great work, the recognition would come. And that was the deal I had made in my head. Do great work, get rewarded. Work hard, get rewarded. I think that's like probably something that I've learned from childhood. And if you're an immigrant child, it's probably something that's been drilled into your brain as well. But in general, I was always told work hard and it will pay off, right? But then promotion season came up and it went to someone else on my team who honestly I did not think was doing better work than me. But here is what he was doing and I was not. He was telling a story. Every win, he made sure the right people heard about it. He spoke it in revenue terms, and he was in a conversation I was not. He was not louder in an obnoxious way. He was just visible in a very deliberate way. And I was furious for about a week, by the way, and I got honest with myself, and I realized he had not stolen anything from me. I had handed it to him by staying silent. I had done the work and then hid it, almost embarrassed by it. And you cannot get credit for work that nobody can actually see. So immediately that year, I changed how I operate. I started keeping a running record of my revenue impact or revenue receipts. And I started translating everything I did into retention and expansion numbers. And I started sending short notes to leaders beyond my manager when something meaningful or impactful happened. And I started telling the story of my wins instead of assuming the wins would tell themselves. And within a year, I was the one being pulled into strategic conversations. Same work ethic, same care for my customers. The only thing that changed was that I let people see it. And I want you to really hold on to that, okay? And I really want you to start to think that if I just tell my story, if I just make it clear exactly the value I am delivering, It is going to make all the difference for your career. And I really hope that as you're listening to this episode, you're starting to just realize that there might be times when you're being humble. And there's a time and place to be humble. And I'm not saying to stop being humble, but when it comes to your corporate career and climbing the career ladder, there's also the humble brag and there's the scene framework. And I want you to start using it, okay? We need to start building our visibility, okay? And we need to stop just expecting that doing hard work is going to result in a promotion, all right? I did some of the hardest work of my career and I ended up being laid off. And it was also another very hard moment in my career, but it made me realize, I was like, dang, I wasn't being visible enough in that organization, okay? And I just hope that as you listen through this episode, it's really starting to resonate for you where and when you need to be visible. That being said, here is your challenge for this week. And it's the first step of the scene framework, and I want you to put it into action. I'm calling it your impact or revenue receipts, okay? Step 1, I want you to sit down and write out every meaningful revenue outcome you have driven this quarter. The renewals you protected, okay? The expansions that you drove, the churn that you prevented. Put a real dollar figure next to each one. And if you don't know the exact number, get as close as you honestly can. That is you starting to stack the proof, okay? And then step 2, I want you to take that list and write one clean paragraph that translates it into revenue language. My book is worth X. I am running it with Y percentage net revenue retention. And this quarter, I protected this much and grew this much. This is you elevating the language, okay? And then step 3 is the part that takes a little bit of courage here. And I know you can be courageous because I know if you're listening to this podcast, you want to level yourself up. So be a little bit courageous, okay? And I want you to send a short, specific note to one leader beyond your direct manager. And I want you to send 2 or 3 sentences and just highlight the win. Say, hey, here's the win. Here's what it's worth. No ask, just attach, expand your room, okay? Do those 3 things this week, please, okay? 1 revenue receipt, 1 note to a leader. That's it. A single action will put you ahead of about 80% of the people who feel invisible and never do anything about it. And if you are curious, I do have a tool that's going to make all of this easier for you to do and easier to do all year long. So you're never kind of scrambling to find all your revenue receipts during review season. Okay. I built a customer success promotion tracker. It's a simple system to capture your revenue wins as they happen. So when promotion conversation comes, you already have your case built. And within this promotion tracker, I have actually already created your revenue storytelling framework, okay? It's the exact spreadsheet that I use to get my promotion, and it's the exact way that I went from being overlooked to promoted, okay? You can go ahead and grab it over at thecustomersuccesspro.com/resources. And if you want it, I will link it down in the show notes. And when you do it, I want to hear about it, okay? When you try these things out that I'm saying in the podcast, especially the weekly challenge, please go ahead and DM me or send me an email or just let me know how these challenges are going for you. And by the way, if you are listening to this podcast episode while driving or at the gym or somewhere where you just don't have a way to engage with it, if you want these weekly challenges sent to your inbox every single week, that's exactly what we do in our free newsletter. Every week, we send the weekly challenges from this podcast into your inbox. So if you want to get on those and make sure you actually have these challenges somewhere visible that you can actually take away and try rather than just listen to me talk about it, go ahead and go and subscribe to our newsletter. I will link it down in the show notes. All right. So I hope that you are going to go and try out the visibility framework and really just tell me how it went. I would love to hear how it went. All right. If this episode hit home for you, can you just do me a favor? Hit subscribe, follow the show, so you never miss an episode again, because we go deep on revenue first approaches and customer success every single week. So leave me a comment. Tell me which of the 5 mistakes maybe that you've been making in your career. I read all my comments. I love them. I respond to every single one. And make sure to share this episode with your CS besties and someone else that maybe needs a little bit of encouragement, that you know is brilliant at their job, but they're just far too quiet about it and they need to hear this episode. I'm Anika Zubair, and this is the Customer Success Pro podcast. And I really hope you know that customer success is a revenue function and a renewal is a sale, and the work does not speak for itself. So it is time for you to speak for it. I will see you next Wednesday at the same time for our next episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Customer Success Pro podcast. I hope you picked up something valuable to take back to your team. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you took just 10 seconds to leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps more CS pros like yourself discover the show. And creating new episodes takes a lot of work, so leaving a nice review keeps me motivated to keep creating. And don't forget to hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcast episodes. I drop a new episode every Wednesday packed with practical tips. And if you've got a topic you'd love for me to cover or want to be a guest on my show, send me a message. All the details are in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, if this episode helped you, share it with a fellow CSM or CS leader. Remember, sharing is caring. Cheers to your CS journey, and I'll catch you next week for our next episode.